Hello, world. Once again, Enough Talk, the L5R podcast. Jesse, Paul. This time we're looking at the holdings from the new order, and we're going to start off alphabetically with Contemplative Shrine. What do you think, Paul?
And this is a good one. This is one that I will be, trying out in different decks and different schemes. If you were to create a fate card that said play this fate card, make 3 gold, that would be a very powerful card. It would disorient the entire environment. People would be warping their decks around it a lot. Other players would just be trying to sort of build a strong deck, but then give themselves some extra like accelerant tempo based off of it. And this lets you turn your Kehoe or spell into make 3 gold, and that's really powerful. There's obviously some restrictions. You have to sort of use the gold in the action phase, and then you can trigger it up for dynasty phase and stuff like that. But Contemplating Drive is a good card. In the right deck, in the right moments, in the right scenarios, it can be quite potent. And so I'm going to play it. The only real downside is 3 for 3 efficient enough? As we get more and more holdings, and the way gold pooling works, you find yourself really wanting a holding that costs 2 but makes 3, a holding that costs 1 but makes 2, a holding that costs 4 but makes 5. Um, but this is a good card, and I look forward to trying to abuse it in some interesting and fun ways. It's like Trading House, which is a card me and you played a lot of, and nobody else ever liked.
I was going to talk about Trading House. This is a sort of reprint throwback. Trading House was a 2 for 2 in late Lotus. It was played.
Not for us. That was 2 for 6, baby.
Yeah, it was played almost exclusively in the raid deck, so you could target it with your pirate, and then make it a 6 producer, bow it, buy some stuff, unbow it, bow it again. I think that this is a solid card. I think 3 for 3 is exactly what you want moving forward. We're going to see a lot of 3 for 3, 1 for 1 schemes because of the new legacy holding, Forgotten Legacy. Will push people towards a certain critical mass of 1 for 1s that'll let them buy their 1 for 1 on one, float 3, and then get their Tireless, and then get their Forgotten Legacy to produce 6. So you want to buy either a Bookkeeper or a Deep Harbor or a Lane of Immorality if that's the direction that you're going. And I think that
Yep.
having some extra 3 for 3s so that you can also set that up. So if you don't even need to go fetch your legacy holding, you can just buy a Contemplative Shrine and a Bookkeeper on one and feel really good about life. It remains to
And
be
there's
seen to me, though, if pitching a card for 3 is worth it. It's not repeatable, so you can only do it once.
no. And
And
there's some good playable Keyhoes, obviously like Banish, but there's the Send Home Banishing Breath and Palm Strike, and then the ranged attacks of Redirecting Range and Wrath of Osana. Well, I know my Keyhoes pretty good, and
yep,
there's one that makes it fair, but they're all pretty solid. And there's a whole slew of spells, but a very specific deck is looking for this kind of card. I would say, a military deck that wants to put down things and still buy more guys, but that might be a deck that needs the full influx of its spells. There's not a great way. If we had a Kehoe with Discipline or something, there'd be some really interesting value plays here. I don't think those exist yet. So converting random card into 3 gold is good, but yeah, you're right. It might not be that good.
I think
But
that
that's this is a well designed.
the deck I'm going to try this out in first will be the Spider Kensei deck that runs the Nushu Genja. So I'll be able to pitch one of my battle Keyhoes to make a weapon if I need to do that, and then also use it for gold. Um,
I like that play. I'm gonna use it in my Lion Blitz deck with the girl that shuffers herself in because I'll have some number of like blitzy spells, and I'll be able to like also be probably playing some followers for Force Generation, so it'll be like turn a spell into gold for a follower or something like that. I mean, I have some ideas on how I'm gonna leverage it. They're good, they're cute, they're not broken.
so Delicate Forge is number 2. I have an
Uh,
article up on Enough Talk talking about holdings and specifically talking about 2 for 2s and about how I think that they're being slowly squeezed out of the environment because 2 for 2 design is stuck in the past, and
yep,
basically 2 for 2 abilities should be on 1 for 1s, and 1 for 1s should be on 2 for 2s. This is an ability that should have been on a 1 for 1. Blowing
yep.
up a 2 for 2 for a weapon is not good enough.
if there was an armor weapon that blew itself up to some meaningful effect, you might be able to talk me into it. You know, if there was throwing knives or something to that effect, I guess what Saruchi Longbow maybe blows itself out. But right now, you're
Chudahangu.
never really in the market, right? So yeah, Chudahangu. We don't have anything like that, so we don't have any sort of proactive way to blow your thing up to meaningful effect, then buy it back, then replay it. So all I see in this card is a 2 gold cost mine, which will come up when we get to the 1 gold cost card that buys the mines. And like that's it. That's the only reason I'm coming to Delicate Forge is if I'm on a very specific like I want to play a bunch of mines to leverage my 1-for-1 mine card.
It also
You
notably
know.
can't target items, so that's the card type that
No,
most
it's only
blows
armor and
itself
weapon.
up.
Yeah.
So sort of disappointing. Check out my article. I think that you'll find it interesting, and it'll shed some light on why I don't like this card. But moving on, we have Developed Quarry. And this was a card that when I saw initially, I glanced over and didn't think much about it. But looking back at it now, I actually quite like it. I think it's a cute design. I don't like that it puts more dice in my holding area, but that's it is what it is. And I think that there'll be some decks that are in the market for this.
I'm fine with it. Again, I'm predominantly playing it because it's a 2 gold cost mine. That's how it's going to end up in my deck. But I do like the idea of slowly it gives you some like late game when you hit that point on turn 4, 5, 6, where you have like 2 gold just sort of left over. You can keep this just sort of hanging out and then transfer over and gain a force, and that's a fine interaction. There's nothing exciting about it for me. I'm never reaching for this holding. I have a feeling it'll mostly get squeezed out of decks again, unless I'm just on a mind scheme. It's not powerful enough, and I think there's enough other options at holdings. I mean, you're not going to take this over a counting house, right? You're not going to take this over a famous bazaar, I don't think.
Well, certainly not over
So
Famous
I like
Bazaar.
what's happening here. To be honest, why does it have to have 3 masterwork tokens? If it was just open bow, give an item or armor a +1 force token, I could be a lot. I could talk myself into it a lot easier. The weird cap is probably not all that applicable, but kind of annoying.
Well, so a couple things. The first is that if this card isn't played, it'll be because 2 for 2s are pushed out by the power, the
Production.
economic productive power
Yep.
of 1 for 1s and 3 for 3s. But I think the most powerful 2 for 2s and the ones we see over and over again are ones that produce force. Force production is one of the best abilities on 2 for 2s, and this produces force. You can tell me it doesn't produce enough force, and that's legitimate. But the fact remains, it puts out +1. You buy a guy
No,
on
no one.
2 plus this. You attach a weapon, bow it, make 1 more force. It pushes them to 7 or 8.
I
7 or
have
8
never
attack.
looked. I have never looked at the Humble House at all this arc, and neither have you. It's one of those terrible rares that no one wants to pull, and this has a very Humble Housey feel to me.
Fair enough. Earthborn Temple. This card
Hey,
depresses me because it reminds me of the Diamond Era promo, Temple of the Ages, the one that gave the 2 for
oh
2 that
wow,
bowed to give +1 force, +1 chi to a personality for each ring you controlled. So
that
I
was a
did a lot
great.
of I did a lot of 15 chi bully dueling in that era, and this card is sort of a throwback to that, but not at all.
So it does have sort of what you're in the market for on 2 for 2s. First off, it's a temple that'll come up with the Brotherhood of Shinsei deck. Some people might be in the market just for saturation effects of temples. I don't think that's really the case because you have Temple to Harmony and you have some other good temples. But I mean, it does just give you force as a battle open without bowing. The problem is that it gives you 1 force.
Right, so this card is strictly worse than the Delicate Mine. It produces only 1 force and only if you meet a certain requirements. The other one produces only 1 per turn, but eventually gets to 3. I think this is straight draft fodder. I don't see anybody playing this ever.
Yep,
QED.
it's just yeah. If there was a if it was like +1 force for each elemental wing, there might be some weird escalation stuff happening. But nope, I'm pretty. I think I'm in agreement with you
Unless
there.
there's now, I will hedge. I'll hedge a little bit and say that if there's a math thing where there's a certain Sugenja when it attaches a certain Earth Sugenja that when it attaches Stones of Purity becomes 7 force, and you need that 1 extra force for some sort of turn turn 3 blitzy type deck, maybe it makes the cut. But if that's the case, then just play a Fate Boost. Don't reach for this. All right. Next up is House of No Tomorrow, and I want to talk about House of No Tomorrow because nobody should play it.
Okay, first off, did you clearly understand? Like when you first read it, did you clearly understand what was happening? Because I'm not sure I did. I felt like it increased the amount necessary for my opponent to gain an honor and made it easier for me to gain a dishonor victory. But I don't. That's not actually what happens,
Yeah, no,
right?
I did get it right away.
I did not.
But
Because
I
yay, adding
understand.
negative numbers.
Yeah, the fact that, and they're kind of smarmy about it,
So
especially the fact that L5R specifically talks about numbers. I hate that the game references that some fact numbers are negative and some numbers are positive. Whatever.
Yep.
But so this seems like a really good card, and especially Spider players are very excited for this card because Spider takes it
right,
on
I
the chin
played
really
3
bad
of
with
them,
Dishonor.
and it buys me at least a whole nother turn, right? It buys me 6 more points of honor loss against an honor deck or dishonor deck, and 6 more points against an honor. I mean, that. I see how you can talk yourself into it.
The problem is it's a fortification, and maybe a deck can play 1 or 3 fortification holdings, 1 copy of a fortification holding 3 times. So maybe this card can make the cut. But any more than that, and you cannot do it. You'll be putting too many eggs in your basket. If on turn 1 you're buying 2 fortification holdings, you're setting yourself up for a blowout when they take your first province, especially if you're a go second deck where you're going to be giving up the first province a lot of the game.
It is another geisha house. Geisha houses are slowly working their way into their own special gold scheme. I think people will play this card for a little while. I think they'll reach for it when they're trying to come up with a sort of dishonor honor. There's good honor meta, right? There's the event that's just like make you lose 5 that you can play in triplicate, and that tends to buy you a turn, if not 2.
Yep.
This you need to hit all 3 of them to sort of buy you a turn, but it also can help against dishonor. I can see people playing this card. We will never be those people. That's not the way we approach our deck building decisions. Even when we meta, we tend to meta a bit harder than this.
My point is just, I think this is fine meta. If this was on a regular 2 for 2, I think it would go into a lot of decks. My point, I think this has the same problem that guys with overstarting PH that are 1 proclaim off of starting honor requirements have.
Yeah, you
That
attach it, and
comes
then
up,
you lose that
right,
province.
the negative, the downside comes up just enough that a slightly worse alternative that's more consistent will win you more games in a tournament that requires you to win multiple games of L5R in a row.
Right, so, and the counter argument is, against the decks you care about this for, you don't care that it's a fortification.
But that's not true because you always care that one of your early purchases is able to be destroyed in a military on military, especially when you're going second. So you're telling me that a Spider military deck, when playing against, say, Lion Scouts, can afford to go turn 1, House of No Tomorrow plus Shinneman Mars, and then lose the house?
Hope is your deck is good enough against all the military decks already. Obviously that's not ideal, but the hope is that you build your, let's say, Spider deck, and it's good enough against a military field, and you desperately need something against honor dishonor, and so you're willing to sort of shave off the percentages to show up some matchups. There's a calculation there. I'm always never going to play this card. I'm never going to want to risk it, but maybe I'm just too conservative there.
Well, hopefully people talk about this one in the comments. Sell me, but I'm not there right now. Jade Bazaar. Now, Jade Bazaar is another card I'm on the fence about.
How bizarre.
How bizarre. Notably, importantly, this is purchasable by a single holding. So I think it might just be playable.
Yeah, so when you first look at it, you sort of you get it. You say, okay, it's Silkworks with the famous bizarre courtesy effect, and that's kind of cute. And then you remember that we're in a different time and place in L5R, and that paying 5 gold that only makes 4 gold doesn't really work. Except if you use your Jadeworks to buy it, it does kind of work. So I can see people trying to reach for this. I can see various schemes coming together. I don't know exactly who that is. Right? Like, I don't know which deck is playing Jadeworks right now, and which low honor faction is going to try to play a 5 for 4. I mean, maybe this just ends up in Unicorn and Unicorn alone because they can buy this turn 1, and that's a fine turn 1. But I feel like this is a cool card that you'll try to work with, and then eventually you'll just say it's not really worth the hassle and move on to more sort of what I would now, for us, traditional schemes, but more stabilized gold schemes with a little bit bigger potential upside.
I'm very bullish on this card. I think this is going to be an environmental staple for a number of reasons. The first is I'm bullish on 3-for-3s, and they're mostly interchangeable at this point. There's no reason why I can't jam a Jade Works instead of a Voice of Experience into a deck. The karmic trait's not that important. I think the refilling holdings face up is the best ability you could put on a holding or any dynasty card anywhere. So if you're running 3 of these and 3 Famous Bazaars and 3 Forgotten Legacies, that's 9 cards out of your deck. You're playing with a 31 card dynasty deck. Your opponent's playing with 40. You're going to crank through it. You're going to see your power cards. You're going to see your stuff come together. And the last thing is,
and if I didn't know about Get Forgotten Legacy, you might be able to sway me with these arguments. But all I'm thinking is like, just play a bunch of 1 gold cost holdings and dig out your Forgotten Legacy and be done with it.
But you can't. I mean, you're not going to be playing 17 1-for-1s in Forgotten Legacy. You're going to be playing.
No, you're going to play 15 1-for-1s in Forgotten Legacy.
All right. Well, I don't think that's optimal at all. But the last point is that you were talking about how we're in the market for 3-for-Thors. We're in the market for 4-for-5s. If you've got a Jade Works, this is a 3-for-4. And so if you're running 3 Jade Works, 2 Jade Bazaar, is that going to hit in the right order enough? And when it doesn't hit, is the courtesy effect worth 1 gold? I think the answer is yes and yes. So I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this card all the time. I'm going to be really happy with it.
You're right, and I might work its way into some of those, 3 gold cost holdings plus like a Deep Harbor, and then you can use Deep Harbor in a 3 gold cost holding to buy this. You're right, it's a good holding, but I do want to point out that courtesy is only when you go second, so high honor factions are not going to be in the market for this at all.
For sure, but well, that depends. I mean, that depends on how the Jade Works thing sort of works out. But okay,
I can see Crab playing it with the Crab Sensei too. Okay, so there's a little bit of disagreement. Now you were making fun of me for my all 15, my 15 1 gold cost holdings. But if you let me play 15 Lane of Immoralities, I totally have a deck.
Yeah. Speaking of cards, I'm bullish on. I played Corrupted Stables. I'll play Lane of Immorality.
I hate that this is what Large Farm has come to, but I'd be playing Large Farm right now, and I don't mind losing my self-honor. In fact, I quite enjoy it. So Lane of Immorality is the card for me. There's not much to be said about it. Cards that make more than they cost are good, and the honor hits are very manageable. Even if you're playing like a Crab or Mantis deck, you proclaim a couple of guys, and it all just kind of washes out.
Yep, this card, the honor loss is so small that I think even some high honor faction, I think even some Crane decks are going to reach for this card. As long as you're
Lion, maybe, if they can afford it. I mean, a lot of places, right? Nexus rotates out, so obviously with Nexus in the environment, it's a much bigger risk.
It's unplayable. It's unplayable in Arc, but in Strict, it depends. So when does the honor loss hit versus the honor requirement for your first personality? I don't know when the check happens, when you declare the recruit action, or when after you pay the gold and he enters play. So the question for Lion is, can I buy this on my 1, lose either 1, go to 6, and then buy a 6 honor requirement personality with this holding? And I don't know the answer to that question. But I think Crane has enough 2, 3s, and 0s that you buy a guy, he's 2 PH, you lose 1, gain 1, or you lose 2 because you got 2 of these and gain 2. It evens out. You're not going to notice the honor loss often on this card. You're going to love playing it. It'll make you tainty, and you'll feel good about it.
Okay, next up is the card. Speaking of cards I don't really understand, Hello Missing Caravan. So base up holdings. So it's specifically the holdings in your provinces, right? It doesn't it doesn't copy.
And in your
this no. So is the holding in play face up? Is that? I guess I misunderstood that. So it's a 2-for-2 that can be a mine or have karmic or be a market.
Non-boldface. So it just counts as a mine and a port and a market and whatever you want it to count as. It's cute. No one will play it. Next card.
Okay.
Just remember that it counts your discard pile because those are face up. It counts your provinces that are face up. It counts your in play.
Yep. So it's never a fortification, so that's nice. But yeah, I got nothing going on there.
Yeah, it's cute. I don't know. I guess like maybe a Geisha House scheme will reach for it.
Yeah, Geisha House. It's a 2 for 2 Geisha
But
House,
again,
and
it all comes down to how bad are 2 for 2s, and I don't know the answer to that yet, not having tested. Now, how bad are 6 for 5s?
well, they've been pretty unplayable for the most part, right? We've played some merchant atolls. I've tried to play some secluded outposts, and none of them have really been very effective. And I don't see anything really changing for that, except this has a really interesting implication in honor v honor matchups. I mean, that's a powerful interrupt, but it comes at a heavy cost of keeping your holding that makes 5 gold unbowed.
No, it is
Um,
tireless. You can do it when it's bowed.
oh, okay, so then you might want to try to reach for this as an honor deck, but man, 6 for 5 is just as the format gets tighter and tighter, the inefficiency of a 6 for 5 is really tough. Uh, what do you think? Is this? Do you see this floating? I mean, for me, when I see a 6 for 5, I see a holding that I want to draft, and that's pretty much it.
So the first thing about the card is I'm sure no one's going to make this mistake, but it's important to read 2-2, not by 2. So this only has any effect on the 3 and the 4 uh, gains.
Right.
The question becomes how many of those are
No, so
there.
that
So,
matters a lot against honor, right? Because honor often will proclaim a 3 PH guy.
yep.
Uh,
Which means the first
I
Otomo
don't know
Bureaucrat's
what it
really
does
good.
against Dishonor.
All
Yeah.
Fate. So right now it's pretty good against Dishonor because it really puts the brakes on all of the mercantile conflict bombs. They go to bomb you out and
Right.
you bureaucrat their bombs, and then the deck's dead in the water.
Hmm.
But for Honor v Honor, this is going to hit one proclaim action a turn because Fate side Honor gain is design limited to 2, and this it doesn't
Yep.
interact with it at all.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this isn't a constructed card. I'm not sure it was designed to be a constructed card. You'll play it in Palace of Odo Sanuchi Big Deck, where you can buy it on turn 1 for 4 gold and have it make 5. So,
Yep.
haha.
Yeah, and if some sort of bomby honor comes out, some bomb honor strategy comes out, or if playing Hakusexy and Makoto in the same deck and buying guys for 5 becomes immensely popular in the next couple seconds, it'll be really good. But in this environment, with honor as it's positioned, it's not so much. As a dishonor meta, I can see it, but I think that the decks that are losing really badly to that bomb dishonor, like Spider, are still going to lose really badly to just here's my dishonored guy getting pinged for 1 or 2 a turn. All right, Plain Library is a card I
Yep,
want to like,
and
but I
so
don't.
it's a neat card. I was gonna. It's just because you hate fortifications, right? This one is expendable. I think that of all the fortifications, so there's a Lion Honor deck that plays the guy who has the Dynasty action to straighten a fortification, and he's a really important part of like Lion Honor, right? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I know who you're talking
Oh, I
about.
can't remember. He's a 4 gold cost
Yep,
Lion
and he's from
Shugenja. It's
Lion
like
the
I think it's
Sand.
Watanabe. Kitsu Watanabe. There's a deck right now that plays fortifications because of him. This is the one for me. This is the one fortification I want to play in that deck. I don't care about increasing my problem strength all that much because this gives me immediate value. Lets me play with my cards. And I like that. And then the expendable trait means that when they go for my target and they take that province, which eventually they probably will, I'll get another card. And like that's all good for me. But for the most part, stay away from it because fortifications are dangerous.
Um, yeah, obviously this is the sort of effect that I always like. I like to manipulate my deck. I like to draw cards. It doesn't draw a
Phoenix
card
too has the
immediately.
guy that
Buys your
puts
fortifications
fortifications
back.
into
Yeah, so
play, like the Phoenix Honor deck. Yeah,
Phoenix can get a little bit of extra
keep
value.
getting.
You can like buy this and then benedictions it to save a province and draw a card and then put it back on and should look at your cards again. There's things to be done with this card. It's just that L5R is a game of economy, and you have to think about your economy first always. And are you really going to
Yep.
put your 3 for 3s in the line of fire? Are you really going to give your opponent a free occupied terrain every time they attack you? Because you will lose the game doing that if you end up playing too many
Yes.
fortifications.
Yes. Because occupied terrain recognized as a powerful card. Oh, come on, man.
I thought you'd like that, man. There's just a reference, whatever. I'm saying, okay, so if
I
every
love
time, if you had a stronghold, look, if you had a stronghold that says every time you take a province, search your deck for and play explosives, would you play that box? And would you win every game that you play with it? And the answer is yes and yes.
Maybe.
And so, why are you giving your opponent that?
You know, your points are well argued. Yeah, well, I mean, so I think that in a specific type of honor deck, like the Phoenix honor deck, where you can mitigate the loss by buying the guy back, or the Lion honor deck, where you can get instant value out of the holding, there's enough pushness with the expendable and the interrupt that you could sort of talk yourself into playing this fortification. That doesn't mean you get to play a lot of fortifications. It means you get to play
Right.
this one. This one specific one is a 3-for-3, and like I'm okay with that. You don't want to get too adventurous. You don't want to put too many eggs in that basket. But if you're really just like you just love fortifications so much, you miss your Caillou Walls deck, then I can accept people will probably maybe play Plain Library from time to time.
Here's what I'm saying: you get one fortification holding in your deck, and it should be a two
Yep.
for two. Now, the
Okay.
reason why it should be a 2 for 2 is because it mitigates the early purchase. That if you go turn one, 2 for 2 fortification plus 2 for 2, and then they take your province, you're not totally screwed. But if you go buy 1 for 1, 3 for 1, and then they come in on turn 3 and take your 3 for 3, and you're left with like a 1 for 1, a 3 for 3, and like a guy, you're dead. The game's over.
Okay.
So
Well, let me pose to you then as we move forward to our next card. Could I interest you in a fortification that's a 3-for-4?
you can't. This card's so close. You read it, you see that it's a 3 for 4. You think, oh my god, they're giving me Sawana Dojo back, only for this sensei, but oh my god, it's Sawana Dojo, and then you remember it's a fortification, which is even worse. Turn one,
I think
put all my eggs in the basket. Turn two, pray. Turn three, lose.
that everybody's gonna try. When I say everyone, I mean all the people playing Brotherhood of Sensei decks, which isn't actually all that many people, might give this a try. And then I think they'll probably realize that it's a really dangerous way to go. It is karmic, so maybe young Sensei decks, but man,
I love the
well, you
flavor
really
text on this card.
all these decks starting with 3 gold, trying to play 5 gold cost. No, this one doesn't work for me.
I love
Well,
the card. I love the flavor
what's
text
the-
on this card because
What's the
it's-
flavor text?
no one would dare attack this holy land.
attack this early land.
It's like
Turns out I would.
it's
I would
it's-
absolutely dare it.
they're painting this enormous target. The fact that you have to play it in a 3 gold deck and you have to spend your entire first turn to buy this card. If you lose this province, you are time walked. You threw away your first turn. Like, this is not real life. You cannot play these cards. Don't do
Yeah.
it. Don't do it.
Okay. There's a card I get to play.
All
Road
right.
Temple. It's like they built a 1-for-1 holding just for me.
Just for me. Oh my god, this card. So my decks will all play at least, I think 12. Looking at the number: 3 Bookkeeper, 3 Deep Harbor, 3 Remote Temple, 3 Lane of Immorality. What do you think?
Yes, sir. I mean, I'm there, right? Like I'm the champ of 1-for-1 holdings, man. I've played Heated Advisors before. You're not gonna scare me off. So, do we like this just as I really like the Ring of Void, or is there something else we look at? I mean, we really like the Ring of Earth too, right? We really like the Ring of
I like this
Water.
card because I really like.
Every now and then
long-term
you'll use it to
fruition.
grab the Ring of Air. Like this is like rings are pretty good, and 1-for-1s are kind of what we like to do.
Drawing cards is really good.
Yep.
Rings are really good.
I
Long-term
think that
fruition
rings
is really
have rings have good, powerful, repeatable battle actions. They're flexible. Turning, I'm trying to think. There was it? Was it second? It wasn't Second City Dojo. There was a card there was a whole thing that we played that was a 2-for-3 that blew up to draw a card. What card was that?
Second City Dojo.
Do you know what I'm talking about? It was last
Second City
turn. Was
Dojo.
it Second City Dojo?
Yep.
I thought that
Nope. Yeah, we
was
played
the
it
one
in
that,
the
like,
we played in the
dishonors
Henshin Blitz deck. That
people.
card
What's
was
the
really
one that
cool.
dishonors people when you have a courtier in play?
Small time bully.
Yep, and so this can just sort of blow up to get you a card. Small time plays. So this just blows up to get you a specific subset of cards. that subset of cards it can get you is really good. So I like this card. I like the ease with which it'll be able to come to play. It's pretty much just it's a temple if you're in the market for temples. And yeah, you rock on with your bad self remote temp.
Yeah,
Let's look at your flavor text.
like I was
Only
talking
the
about
devout
before,
ever visit this building. Some say the spirit.
the one for ones is
Okay.
where you want to see these sorts of blow themselves up. So I think that this holding's a slam dunk. I thought that the one that goes and searches for ports was a slam dunk. So keep them coming, Brian Reese.
Yep.
No more blow up your 2-for-2s. Blow up your 1-for-1s. All right, the
Rich
next one up. This card is the real deal for the same reason why I love Jade Bazaar and the same reason why I love Famous Bazaar. Rich Vein is a less potent version of those, but if you're running all mines, this is just another way to rip through your Dynasty deck, get more gold, and be happier in the later turns of the game.
I don't know. Have we seen? I don't think we've seen any 1-for-1 mines, but we've seen a bunch of 2-cost mines.
We will soon. Labor
so
of the
this could be
Zokajin is a mine.
Yeah. So there you go. So one of the things we've seen now in Holden design is sort of synergy and keywords to create schemes. In the last set, they gave us geisha houses and the market port stuff. Now you're seeing the interconnectivity of mines and the value of temples with which it relates to the sensei. Rich Vein is a 3-for-3 that can give you some positive dynasty flow, and that's solid. That's good. You can't do anything with the non-mines you look at, right? They just sit there, but that's okay. You can still put one into the province and flush it or something like that. So, I mean, to thin in the deck, moving your dynasty, all positive upside. Good card. Probably great for Lion.
Obviously, all the mine clans, Lion, Crab, Phoenix, Dragon will play this card automatically. But I think that a lot of decks, anybody who's reaching for mine cards is going to play this. I think decks that don't go the Jade Bazaar route, that don't want to try playing that card will end up playing this. Or try playing this just for the extra dynasty flow. You mentioned 1-for-1s because if you flip it on 1, then you can get a 1-for-1 and buy it, but I don't think you even need to. I think it's fine to even go Rich Vein, find another Rich Vein, flush it. You're perfectly happy with that. Just you're getting 2 dynasty cards out of your deck for the price of 1. That's all you're looking at when you do this. You're just setting up those later turns where you're buying 4 guys instead of buying 2 and 2 holdings. And then we come to Shrine of the Colonies, which I think...
And on to the next one. This is not a card. Not a card. Please ignore.
Yep.
I mean, you have some... there's nothing here. The Kentucky has a trait that does this, reduces honor losses. None of it matters. If it was to a minimum of 0, it still really wouldn't matter. This just doesn't have any. It doesn't have enough impact on anything. If you're, I'm a man who loses himself honor like crazy. I play all sorts of honor loss cards, and these kinds of 2-for-2 effects that reduce. I just don't care. I'm moving on.
Remember that.
Ready to move on with me, Jesse?
Negative 20 is a big number, and getting all the way down there takes some time. So I think a lot of people end up getting afraid a little bit of. They go, well, I'm running these cards to make me lose honor. I need to mitigate that in some way. No, you don't. Just win the game. That's how you can mitigate it.
So if I buy 2 of these on my first turn, then my Kepo only loses me 1 honor, and now they're gaining all kinds of... I don't care. I'm moving on. I don't care.
Just mitigation of downsides isn't what you want to be playing in the general. You want to be just building a deck in such a way that you can absorb the downside and power through anyway. And we come to... but it's potentially a real card. This is the 1-for-1.
Yeah, no, this is the one I talked about. I think people will try to build mine schemes with this in concert with Rich Vein, in concert with their faction-aligned mines. So if you've constructed your deck correctly and you have the right mix-up of cards on you, this is a 1-for-2 holding, and that's good.
So it's a strictly worse.
Better than Deep Harbor if all your holdings are mine. No, it's not strictly worse. It's strictly better because if all of your holdings are mines, then you always have Deep Harbor mode activated. Plus, you can use this to throw down a Caillou Axe.
Sure, but if you're running all mines and you're
So
not
it's a
running
strict
Famous
upgrade to Deep
Bazaar, then
Harbor, assuming
I
you
question
constructed
your
your
old
deck.
scheme.
Wait. Except you have the Witch Vein, which gives you a Famous Bazaar type cycle effect.
I mean,
And
I
you
hear you.
know
Like
you have
your
some number
argument,
of armors and weapons in your deck, and being able
yeah,
to attach those with a single one for one is good.
loophole. Like your
So it's
loophole is
just a question of
noted.
deck construction.
I question whether or not the payoff
It's
for going all
not
mines is
a
worth it.
loophole. It's I don't know if you have to go all mines, if you just have to go like 15. I don't know what the exact number of mines is, but I think that first off, the cards don't have to compete with each other directly. You can play both of them. And I think that if you're playing the sort of deck that I envision playing my Toils of Zokujin in, it's often going to be superior to a Deep Harbor. I don't know if it's always. I said it was strictly better. You said it was strictly worse. I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle. Depending on how you've constructed your deck, it will sometimes be better and maybe sometimes be worse.
Fair enough. I do think that this is a card that Lion's going to grab a lot of times.
Yep,
Um,
this
this
is a
is,
real card. Like
yeah, yeah, absolutely. No,
this is going to see
absolutely.
play in a couple of.
I hear you. Yeah, cheap attachments and positive gold. I feel like I
Whenever
can figure out a way to build a deck around that. Last one.
whenever you have something that makes more than it costs. Weapon
Yep.
artist. So this is like the coolest draft stronghold or the draft holding ever, right? It's 7 for 6,
This
and
is
it's super great incremental advantage thereafter.
this is a strictly better Master Smith. Except that you only get +1 chi, not +2 chi.
Well,
Gotta
wow,
just gotta look at the
Master
things
Smith.
that matter.
Okay, well, I mean, shout out for the reference. I think that there's a lot of cards that are strictly. But doesn't Master Smith make like 4 gold?
That's what I'm saying. Master Smith cost 8 and made like 3, and then he made a 2/2 weapon. So if you're playing the Abbot, this card might be playable, but it's not. Don't play it. All right, let me be less
I
flip.
think this. I think this. So I think this is a card that I'm going to double back to. Let me double back here because I really like big holding design. I mean, I like it when sort of holdings like this are. Obviously, you can't print too many of them because so many of them just go unplayed. But I can see a world where with the Forgotten Legacy holding, you're like, okay, first turn I buy my 1 gold cost holding plus a Forgotten Legacy, and then turn 2 I go like buy a weapon artist, and another 1 gold cost holding, or buy a secluded
Yeah.
outpost, or buy a school of wizardry, right? Like I can envision a world down the line where, in fact, maybe you'll play a bunch of these cards in concert. Maybe you'll play a bunch of, maybe you'll have like 10 or 12 or 15 holdings that all cost above your starting gold production. And the only way that they'll ever be able to do that is when you get your Forgotten Legacy holding to sort of search out for on turn 1. And I think that there's some really interesting ideas and schemes that you can get to once we start being able to play with those cards. Right now, there's no way you're touching Weapon Artist. But
So I'm sort of in love. Not
in the
love.
future, there might be a way to value here, and it's a mine.
I like the idea of Kensei's time coming by using these little effects that create weapons and just putting them out there and turning on all your cool Kensei cards and still having real fate actions to play. I like that as a concept, so I sort of like Weapon Artist intellectually. There's a couple problems with it. He makes the exact same weapon that the spider guy we've been talking about, or that I've been talking about quite a bit, makes for 3 gold more, and it's also a 7 gold holding. So are you really going to bow a 6 producer to make a +2/+1? It seems pretty unrealistic, unless you've got some sort of straight effect, which aren't that common.
Right, there's no like stuck in Rokugan. So if you have the Abbot,
Yeah.
if you have Yasuki, whatever he is from Coils of Madness that straightens a holding,
Yeah, who's sitting in a
Yasuki,
rotate.
Tomo, yeah, or I mean, I guess if you have the Mantis Clan armor, then yes. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's otherwise you gotta be down to one province with a ton of gold and really nothing to do with it.
So my
Um,
question with the card like this, and I've made sort of these critiques of why of missed opportunities on cards. Why wasn't this just limited create a weapon for 7 gold on a holding that makes less than it costs? Why
uh,
not just give yourself make a weapon every turn?
because when they built it, they were trying to build a big holding at a common slot for draft, and they weren't thinking about how it might impact constructed formats. It is the only real answer I can come up with.
And that's fair.
The design idea behind it was probably like, what do you do once you've bought your big holding, but you've lost some provinces, and that, you invested in the big holding, and well, let's just have it throw out some weapons, and okay, whatever.
All right, guys, that was all the holdings from the new order. Let us know what you
Cool.
think. Leave a comment. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Search for Paul's videos on RedTube. Uh,
Well, should we hold on? Stop. Should we just knock out the two events in this, or do we want to give them their own separate video?
we'll throw them in. Well, we'll throw them in somewhere else. Look for the events
I think we
later.
should just do a bonus. We haven't cut it off. Come on, bonus round, bonus round.
All right,
People love a bonus
bonus round,
round.
bonus round. Let me pull them up. You guys gotta. So the view here is gonna get weird for a second while I
That's
pull these
okay. I'll
up.
talk through it. So there's exactly two events, so it doesn't require a lot. There's a rare and
All
there's
right,
an uncommon. We
let's
will
look
begin
at
with the
it.
rare, which is Devastating Betrayal. And this is a really powerful effect. We've seen it have a lot of value when it was tacked on to Celestials. Benton's Blessing and Ryoshin's Last Words were two
Yep.
cards that were very common.
Don't forget the
This
holding that was
isn't
played in Emperor Edition that did the
Seat
same
of
thing.
Power.
Seed of Power. There was what was
Yep,
the holding
Seat
from
of
last
Power.
art?
So,
The 2 for 2 that blew up to do this.
was that not Seat of Power?
No. That was from Samurai Edition. I'm talking about Emperor Edition card. C something. The
I
name was sort of funny. Anyway,
Right. So redirecting is pretty powerful. Choosing new targets. This one you have to sit in your provinces, and we don't really have the sort of big unit constructed deck like yet. The one where you have sort of one big guy with a bunch of stuff, and then little dudes supporting him that you redirect your actions to. But that deck might come together eventually as the card pool widens and you get some better platforms and cheaper fodder. So this is a cool event. I don't think there's a place for it yet. I haven't found a deck that can really capitalize on it, though I do intend to explore it, and it's fun to have interrupt on an event. So I mean, I like Devastating Betrayal. I'm fine with it.
yeah, I think the deck.
I
That's
don't think I'd ever
gonna.
run into triplicate, but
I think the big unit deck is going to be the Unicorns to Genja deck, and there's a build of it that's built to go all in all the time. What's interesting about the design of this card is that it puts you down a province to give yourself this ability. But if you're playing a big unit deck, you don't care. You buy your one guy, and then you're playing out your fate deck. You're just loading up on attachments that you're drawing from your other deck, so you can sort of stifle your dynasty flow just a little bit.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a little hairy. I mean, how long do you let it sit there? That kind of thing. But I do think that there are types of decks that are in the market for this specific kind of effect, and if it lines up, it can be very powerful. It can be incredibly annoying to play against, right? You're staring down a clan champion with a weapon or two, and you just don't have a way you have one or two ways to deal with them, and they have a devastating betrayal and a fallen sacrifice, and you're just like, I got nothing. How am I supposed to work my way through this?
yeah,
And
and my
oftentimes
second
you
point,
can't. And
the second point I was going to make is that I think that if it's turn 4, 5, 6 and above, if this flips in your province, you're fine. Just okay, I got Devastating Betrayal. You get to free roll an attack, and then if it doesn't do anything, you take a
Yep.
province and you flush it. And it was just a better version of Desperate Measures. So you're perfectly happy with it. I think this will find a home, like I said, in Unicorn.
I'm vaguely remembering now. We can't let events sit in provinces. Is that a thing? They can sit in provinces as long as we don't trigger them, right? Right.
I have no idea. I assume so.
Right.
Um,
We really should learn how to play sometime.
no, it must be that way. It is, otherwise, Fever in the Blood would be an unplayable card.
You're right. You're right.
Um,
I
I
forget
think
why I
that
was
this
thinking
this
you had
card might have a
censorship.
home pre-rotation in Philippines Crane. So I'll certainly try it out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that application, but that's absolutely the sort of deck that would use this, right? All your eggs in a basket.
Yep. So super cool
Okay,
card.
and
Let's play it. And our other one, Seclusion. This is the promo art or the teaser art for the set.
less
It's a
less
bad Time of Vengeance.
right. So it's this is the kind of card that at different points in the game's history might have been really powerful, but it's been adjusted. Now they it does let you get a unique guy, so
Mm.
that means that you can get your super powerful unique. Except there's not a lot of super powerful uniques to get anymore, and then there's the gold cost restriction. And so, your cheaper guys can't blow up to get a cool, expensive Nakaru or something like that. And you're going from blowing up a guy in play to putting a guy into a province. It's okay. Honor decks could conceivably play it just to make sure they hit their proclaims. Love letter decks might play it if they're only playing like one of the lion love letter and one of the crab love letter, just to make sure they can try to get the right mix, because you need to have one of each faction. And I think those are the two places that it could come up. I don't think honor deck should play it. I don't care enough about the love letter deck. I don't think it's good enough, so I'm not going to really worry about it. It's close to being a card with a meaningful effect, and if ever they print like some super just awesome busted unique that you really want to have in play on turn 4 or turn 3, then maybe Seclusion becomes a card that you want to play as a tutor effect. But right now, it's just eh. Will I play it in big deck to maybe dig up my Kami? Yeah, probably.
Where I will be playing this card, of course, is in my Panku decks, where I will be taking your guys and removing them from the game to go find a Shishaka Hoa to eat your future guys.
I mean, that's an application that I absolutely knew about, but I didn't feel it was worth mentioning because it's so outside of
Regular Sanity.
what you're trying to do.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we still start every new set with like, let's see what we can do with the Pantu deck. At some point,
it's
we
pretty
gotta stop
pathetic. Like,
ourselves.
at what point do we let this horse drop?
Okay, and now,
I think another place.
now, okay.
I think
I was
another
gonna end
place
it,
this
but what you
card
got?
might flourish is in Phoenix Honor. I've been thinking about Phoenix Honor builds that run Tsukimi, the non-unique champ, for a long time. So this way you can buy Tsukimi, gain 5, and then Seclusion are out to get another Tsukimi Proclaimer again for 5. It's a little bit more elegant way. I was using the Visions of Darkness before to get her. This might just be like a cheaper, more flowy way. It also might just be a strictly worse way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving up a dynasty slot to remove your guy, and you can remove a bowed guy, so you can still get some value out of the guy before he goes. But it's a lot for a little effect, especially when you can pretty easily just flush your provinces correctly and make sure you have your personalities in your provinces.
For sure. So this is right on the border of
Maybe
playability.
maybe in like a lion breed, like I mean, we're thinking of application, so the card does have some value. That this proves that it's not a bad card, even if it ends up not being played, even ends up not being good. It as a designed card, the fact that we're spending as much time as we are discussing it. I could see a situation where like I blow up my cheap lion personality to put the one Shugenja in my provinces, and then immediately shuffle it in to make an ancestor just to try to like get some of that going.
Yeah.
It's all kind of eh.
I think the problem with this card mostly is that Visions of Darkness is legal and will continue to be legal, and so it's trying
And
to sort of
removing
do
your
what
target
Visions
guy
does.
from the game.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Visions doesn't remove itself from the game. It just blows itself up. You can get it back with Spirited Dispute. Visions is only
Eliminate the
1
gold.
gold. It's drawn out
Eliminate
of
the
your fate deck.
gold cost restriction, and I'm there. Eliminate the gold cost restriction, and I'm using this to get my fatties. Like I'm building my deck to get a gold, get cheap guy, remove cheap guy, get fatty. But I can't do that, so I
Yeah.
can't scale upward, and so it's just kind of a dud for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure that card's even broken. It has no restrictions, right? It can get uniques, it can get out of clans. Um,
Yep.
but at least, I mean, that would certainly be a pushed card, the one you're talking about. But the one that we get is what it is. All right, guys, so that's the bonus round. 2 events. They're both pretty interesting. And I think they both showcase the coolness of the event change. I'm not completely on board with it yet,
Yep.
the whole non-unique new event triggering. But here's 2 interesting
Yeah.
applications of them, I think.
Cool. Okay, hang loose, everybody.